So that's a flag.
What's a flag?
The insurance side as
Uh,
well. So if you got it in the trust, make sure you're insuring the trust that has his name on it. Only drawback is if they cut a check if something does happen. You'd have to make sure you have that resignation in place so you can.
that's gonna be nasty getting that check. I've had I've cashed checks with seller's name with the power of attorney before.
Yeah, that'll work.
I've done it, but I think they can all be a little funky. What's going on, Roundup homies? Good afternoon. Greetings to you. Greetings, class. It is an honor to be with you again. Welcome to the Roundup Network. I am Chris Haskins. I'm going to be your co-pilot this evening as I fly over the United States and talk to you about creative financing from coast to coast. Yes, I repeat, yes, this can be done in your state. Don't think that just because you live in where. I'm sorry, I had to get that out of the way, Clint. I got to get just because where you live doesn't matter. This can be done in your state. So tonight we're hanging out with our pilot is going to be Clint Coons, real estate attorney and investor. How you doing, my friend?
Chris, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
So I get all the time. Can this be done in my state?
Well, shit, that always happens because you have people who don't understand it, who have a degree, and because they don't understand it, the safest answer is, "No, you can't do this."
I remember last time we talked, Clint, and you were saying how it's even difficult. You are an attorney, and it's
Hmm.
difficult for you to work with attorneys.
Yeah, right. Well, again, it's attorneys by their default want to control their client, control the conversation, and be the smartest person in the room. And when you put a couple of them together in the room, it can get, yeah, look around, hey, it's me, right? Um, just they're always finding ways to not get things done rather than to get things done. I'll give you a perfect example. It's completely off topic, but I have this client in Pennsylvania. Phil lives in Philadelphia, has all his properties, acquired, doing subject to deals. They're actually in limited liability companies, and we're going to put together a holding LLC. And he said, well, if you do that, you can only transfer 74% of these LLCs because if you transfer more, that's considered to be a taxable transfer. You can do it in 3 years, you can transfer the rest. And I said, well, how was the city of Philadelphia going to know if it went from my name to my holding LLC? Were you going to call them up and tell them? Is there a mechanism for them to find this out? The guys, no, they wouldn't know. Well, then why are we even having this discussion? But that's just they find reasons not to do it.
That's rough, Clint. That's
Yeah.
rough, man. So tonight, Roundup homies, I wanted to bring Clint on because I am concerned because we're doing more and more and more creative financing deals, merely because of the fact that, in my opinion, he who understands creative financing and subject to will win in an extreme way over the next 5 years, Clint. What would you say to that statement?
I would say you could read Wall Street Journal or maybe it was the Washington Post, and they're talking about the fact that even in traditional sales of personal residences now, you're seeing creative financing being used over traditional financing. So, yes, absolutely, this is becoming more popular and more mainstream when people realize working with lenders, it's a pain, right? There's too many regulations now out there. It's too hard to get deals done, and you're not meeting the goals of each party. Because really, in a transaction, it's about what does the seller need, what does the buyer need, how do we put something together that meets each person's needs, and then we both walk away happy.
That's cool, man. That's cool. These interest rates, I want you guys to understand from 2020 to 2022, lowest interest rate in the history of mankind, right? So all these distressed sellers are going to be in every market, right? So we can go in and create these unbelievable deals and deal with some of these loans with these low interest rates. You're going to win, y'all. So, Clint, for the few people that don't understand sub two, give us your kind of 40,000 foot definition of what a subject to deal is, my brother.
Yeah, so in a subject to deal, as the buyer, what I'm doing is typically helping someone that's in a distressed situation financially. They want to move and they've got this property and they don't have time to sell it or whatever it is. You're going to come in, you're going to help them achieve whatever they need to do. And in exchange for doing that, I call them problem solvers, right? When I'm solving that person's problem, in order to do that, I'm not going to be willing to take on more debt. I'm not going to go out there and get traditional financing. Um, so I'm going to ask the seller to sell me the property and allow me to take over the mortgage. Now, I'm not going to sign on to the mortgage, but I'm going to just make those payments on that property for that seller. And so it allows me now to buy property without having to obtain my own financing. So regardless of my credit score, it gives me a leg up or a leg into the market, which a lot of people, when they first get started, maybe they've got blemishes on their credit because they had some bad things happen to them in the past. And they think, well, no bank wants to work with me. You don't need to be working with banks. If you're working with sellers who are willing to allow you to step in and pay off their mortgage, the mortgage stays in the seller's name. And you're out there now and you're a real estate owner, you're a landlord, you're making money, you're paying off the mortgage for the seller, you're building equity in the property during this entire time. You're taking that property, and now that you're the owner of it, you're doing cost seg on it, bonus depreciation, wiping out your taxable income. You're getting paid 4 different ways on a lot of these deals when you set it up, and just the numbers are mind-blowing.
What is the main thing, Clint, in your opinion? You do this all the time, that holds people back from deploying the strategy?
It's education, right? How do you start that conversation with someone in order to do this? Because a lot of people say, well, who's going to do that? Why would they still stay on the loan and allow you to assume their loan? Well, people have a lot of different motivations exactly to do what they need to do. And I've been doing this for 25 years, and it's exclusively pretty much with real estate investors. And our firm has 500 employees. We have offices in multiple states, so we work with people who are doing this stuff day in and day out for years. And it's always the same thing: is that once you figure this out and you educate yourself and you see how to approach a seller, how to identify those people that need your assistance, and you walk in with that approach in mind. Not that I'm in there to rip someone off. Those people, they're always going to run into problems. You don't take that approach, but you walk in there generally trying to be a problem solver, finding out what their issues are, and then offering genuine solutions to that. Deals will come your way.
Being a problem solver, I think that's a big hurdle. Well, I had to get over that, Clint, because when I used to go in beginning of my career, I went in to try to get a deal. And I learned what you just said, be a problem solver, Clint. How does one develop that? Because it's a huge mindset shift talking to a homeowner.
Well, it just becomes, you're asking questions. You're finding out what their pain points are, and so you don't start the conversation with, "I want to buy your house." Hey, I see you got this problem. What can we do to help you in this individual situation? And you let them ultimately reach that decision on their own, and you're guiding them along the way. So it's just, it's going to take practice, of course, to develop the skill. But I'm going to just go back to this, it's training, work with people like yourself, get educated through you and what you've done, learn from that, and scripts, and you'll start to develop the rapport.
Yeah. Clint, before, when I first learned this strategy in 2007, it took me 3 years to deploy it. Just what you said, I'm like, ain't nobody gonna do that. No way. No way somebody gonna sell me their house and leave the loan in their place. What type of people are we talking about here, Clint? Could you give us like the avatar or maybe somebody that does this stuff?
Sure. You're going to have people that lost their job, right? And they need to move. So that's going to be an avatar. You can have somebody that's going through a divorce, or somebody had a death in the family, and they just can't take over that mortgage, or there's been some other life-altering circumstance that has put them in a situation where they've fallen behind on their payments. And a lot of times that's how you're going to identify them, is that they're behind on their mortgage or they're behind on their property taxes. And so there's something from the financial point of view there that is affecting their ability to pay that mortgage off. And so one of the things that I found with people who use creative financing, what they're doing for people in that position is they're helping keep their credit score, trying to restore that credit score, because eventually when they get past that bump in the road, they're going to be able to go out there and get another property, and they're going to qualify for a future loan. And so that's who you're looking for, those individuals typically that are in that position, and they really need a lifeline. So you're bringing them that lifeline financially.
Clint, to give us something, well, tell us what is not a subject to, well, because most people, when I hear people say, well, we're going to try to sub to it or we try to do a different route, I'm like, how do you know if you're going to sub to it? We don't even know if the seller's down. Tell what would a deal look? What are we not looking for?
Not
When we're
looking
making offers on deal.
where you're signing a personal guarantee on that. That's not a subject to deal. A subject to deal is one which I have to go out and get a loan and pay off the property. And a straight up subject to deal, you're buying the property subject to an existing mortgage that you're not assuming. So your credit is not being pulled. You are not obligated to that lender. Should the seller, say, file for bankruptcy and the lender were to foreclose on the property, doesn't touch you. You're not involved in that scenario.
Sweet. Roundup, once again, we're here with Clint Coons, real estate attorney and investor. He actually does this stuff too. I'm bring people on here that are actually doing deals, And if you got questions, please put them in the chat. We'll be going over Q&A here shortly. And further, if you want to get your question answered first, there's a little join button down there that you can join to be one of our members. And it costs you nothing but a large Starbucks coffee a month. And it helps me bring people like Clint on here to share the good word of financial literacy. So Clint, you were talking about something before we got on here, brother. Something about different things that you're seeing now in the creative real estate world that you might not have seen a few years ago.
Yeah, so what I've been seeing now is that people who are engaging in creative financing, some of the things that they were doing a year or 2 years ago, strategies that weren't necessarily concerned from the lender's point of view, that the lenders weren't scrutinizing the docs as much, are now starting to creep up on them. And I'm seeing that some of these investors are starting to receive notices from lenders indicating that if certain conditions are not met, namely that the seller is residing in the property, that they are going to accelerate the mortgage. And so I've had some investors now that are in this situation where there's really not a lot for them to do other than refinance the property themselves, or sell it and try to get some equity out of the deal, and then pay off the mortgage, of course, in that. So there are certain things that they're doing that are triggering the lenders to accelerate, and those are the things we need to be watching out for.
No, I want to make sure you say acceleration equals due on sale clause. I want people to, is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, Clint, we got to bring you down. We got to bring you down to layman's term. I got to get you back in this little box. So the due on sale clause, you're seeing it more than before. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, talking to my staff, we've probably received notice from our clientele at least 10 to 12 a month right now. May not seem like a lot, but when you go from 2 a year, or 1
Zero.
a year.
Yeah, zero.
So it's happening. And so what's causing this problem? I'll just give you a couple of issues that have come up recently.
Y'all listen up here. This is gold here. Y'all please take notes and hit that thumbs up, because you got the attorney right here talking about this stuff. I'm not even qualified to talk about this.
So what I would tell people a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, you're setting up a sub-2 deal and you're going to use a land trust to put that deal together, or maybe you're just doing an LLC, but I'll just stick with the land trust. I would say, all right, use a separate LLC as the trustee of your land trust. I would set it up in Wyoming, and we would list it as a trustee for anonymity purposes. So you're taking title on the Red Dog Trust with Big Sky LLC as the trustee. And so the title now would pass from Chris to this LLC as trustee of the trust. Banks wouldn't say boo about that. They didn't care. Nothing would come up. But now that same strategy, banks, they catch it, they're scrutinizing it, they're seeing that change in ownership, and typically what triggers that is the insurance is going to change. Now they're sending out an inquiry letter to find out what's gone on. Does the seller still live in the property? So I've shifted, and I know you've talked about this before in our prior conversations, and it got me thinking about it as well. Hey, we got to keep that seller on. So we're putting that seller on as trustee of that trust. And then my LLC is the successor trustee. So we're doing the same deal, but the trust now, if it was a Red Dog Trust, it's going to have Chris as trustee, if Chris is the seller of the Red Dog Trust. We wrap that deal up. He resigns, provides me a trustee's deed to my LLC. I take that, wow. I put it in my pocket. I don't record it anywhere. So on title, then when we get the insurance, it goes to the name of the seller in the trust. So that stays consistent with the bank when they're loan service, because a lot of these, where they're emanating from, are the service processors, which is the odd point, because typically they just make sure the money's coming in, the mortgage is being paid. But from there, the seller stays there. As I say, he's resigned. So even though we keep that in place, no one knows that my LLC is actually the trustee. And of course, you get the power of attorney to go with it. So there's two documents that are really important there that I just mentioned. Trustee's deed, power of attorney. You need the seller to give you both of those documents. You're going to need them at some point in time. So those are some issues there. The other issue that popped up is the change of address on the mortgage statement. Now, one of the things that I often tell investors, hey, before you close, you make sure that you get those statements set up online. If the seller already has a login, you get that login, you change it over to yourself, and that's how you keep receiving the statements on that property via online. Sometimes people want to change the address and want to receive the physical statements. So when they go in and they change the address, if they're using a virtual business address, because they have an out-of-state address, then that will trigger the lender as well, because they'll say, wait a minute, you now want your mortgage statements and all statements to be sent to this other address. And we've tried to say, well, we're only doing this for tax and accounting purposes. It has nothing to do, but see, that horse has already left the barn. And it's running around the track, and the lender's going, well, wait a minute, now we still want verification that the seller still resides in the property. You need to provide us this within 30 days, or we're going to enforce the due on sale clause. And that's what I just recently dealt with. I had written 3 letters for my client. This one was U.S. Bank on a particular property in Arizona, to no avail. They just said, prove to us the seller's still in the property.
Then why would the seller have to be there? Was this a loan where there was an owner-occupant loan, perhaps?
Yes.
Can we peel that back a little bit, because some people may not even know what that is?
So with the owner-occupied loan, the owner has to reside in the property for, in this particular case, for a set term of years. And if that owner vacates the property, then it violates the term of the loan agreement. And many times these come under special loan programs that are either monitored by the state and or they're Freddie Fannie type loans. And
wow,
the lender itself, in order to be compliant, they're going to scrutinize those loans a lot more than they would a conventional loan, because it's part of a special program. So yeah, and you're right on point. That was a special loan in that situation. But it also speaks to, hey, so here's some things we don't want to do. And that address was the problem in this situation for her. I said, probably, your next deal, you don't want to use a virtual address out of Wyoming for a property that's in Arizona because that's going to probably get some questions.
They didn't have to use that address. They could have used a different.
I know.
You could use different address.
Correct. You should have put the PO box in that area.
In that area.
I know. So I typed up a letter and said, well, with all the problems with migration that is coming through Arizona, we're having a problem with theft of mail. And they said, yeah, but then why you send it to Wyoming? They said, obviously you've moved to Wyoming. No, that's where my law firm's office is located. So,
Could be.
Couldn't sell
You don't
that.
want to get that stuff though, Clint. I don't want to see that.
I was trying. So, yeah, those are things you ought to be doing. But yeah, the land trust, that is my go-to strategy, as it's your strategy for that stuff.
Me too. I'm just listening, brother. So for people out there, I remember when I have this time warp in my mind. When I started years ago, I thought if I bought a house, I could move out the next day or in 2 weeks. I didn't know that. For people watching, you may not know either. It's in the deed. You have to live there, or it may not even be in the deed. It may be in the loan docs.
Yeah.
Where you have to live there. I didn't know that. I didn't know the lender could dictate. You know how it is. You real estate and buy it. I do what I want to do. If I want to move in, I'll move in. If I want to move out, I'll move out.
My money, my terms. The only thing I can't do is charge you a exorbitant interest rate, but it's the way it is.
So they can dictate. So round up, homies, I want you to hear that what Clint just said, man. You got to make sure you know. Clint, I'm just imagining somebody stepping in, doing a sub-2 for one of those people with those loans, and then they change all that stuff. That's going to be a big slap on the wrist. I mean, you did violate the terms of that loan.
It is. And, even if you violate it, it's not your problem, right? So that's the thing to always keep in mind, that it's not your issue. The property, if the lender accelerate or enforces a due on sale clause, the property is going to get sold. And, if there's still some meat on that bone, then you're going to make some money when that property is sold. And I know ideally we would like to be making that rental income that's coming in and getting that appreciation, but it's a lesson learned, right?
Yeah.
If you buy right, you're still going to make some money. Something else, I don't really know how to golf. I just picked this bad walking habit up. But I was invited to join this course from a friend of mine. He's a bankruptcy trustee here in Washington State for the Western District. And he's been there for maybe 35 years. He's been a trustee. And we were talking 2 weeks ago about subject to transactions, because I had another client where the seller filed for bankruptcy. Mm-hmm. And I said, so in that situation, how does that work out? And
he's familiar with the strategy, no doubt, from you talking about it, or he was already familiar with it?
Oh, he's dealt with it.
Oh
yeah, he's dealt with it, because as a bankruptcy trustee, he's dealt with situations many a times, he said, where seller or a person files for bankruptcy. They'd actually sold their house subject to an existing mortgage to a real estate investor, and the real estate investor will come on the scene and say, oh no, I'm the owner of this property, you have no rights to it. And they have, I forget the name of the agreement, where you hold the seller accountable, even though they make the seller sign something that they're still going to be responsible, even if they file bankruptcy. And
disclosure.
He just started laughing. He goes, that's what people say is, let me tell you the reality of the situation. If there was a preferential transfer within 2 years, I'm taking that property. Wow. Because I will take that property unless the seller or the buyer can negotiate that from me. And so the buyer, then it's on the onus of the buyer. And I thought, all right, that's interesting. So, Mark, I want to know, how I can trick the bankruptcy trustees so they don't come sniffing around and they're going to stay away from my deal. And he was
Wow.
laughing because you're never tricking me. And I said, I know you're the unicorn of the bunch, but let's say we're talking about the herd. And he said this. He goes, tell your clients that when they're buying the property, what they need to show when you're doing a subject to deal like this is that you bought it for fair market value for that property. And so the way you establish that is you pull comps or similar comps to the property and show that your price was around there, but then also state the condition. Note how many problems. He goes, you need to go through that property and say, this was messed up, this was messed up, this was messed up. So then if your seller ever files for bankruptcy, then you can, and the bankruptcy trustee wants to pursue an action and take that property back into the bankruptcy estate and sell it and try to recoup funds, then you have a very strong argument that you paid fair market value. And he said, as long as you can show them that, or you're close to it, within 5, 10%, he goes, I'm not even going to touch it. It's not worth my time to deal with. But if you had somebody that walked in and they have not papered their file, is what you're doing. You're papering your file on this deal. Mm-hmm. Then if that seller files for bankruptcy, you could be in a situation fighting with the bankruptcy trustee to keep that property and having to pay out of pocket money to the bankruptcy estate, or that he's in control of at that point in time. So wow. I think that's powerful information coming from somebody who's dealt with this many times in his career. And he always laughs at real estate investors. He said that he calls it, he doesn't call it creative finance. He says to do these, I forget the word he used. And, I started laughing. I go, I mean, creative real estate investors, because call it whatever you want, but if they don't do it right, I'm getting it.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah.
These bankruptcy trustees, those dudes got some power.
They do.
You obviously know, but I didn't know that all the stuff they could undo and put back together and go back. I'm like, I didn't even know that was possible. The stuff they could do.
Well, that's how they get paid. More assets they collect, the more money they make.
Is that how it works?
That's how it works. And they get hourly too. They get paid anyway. They make a really good living.
They do. Listen, Clint, we're going to keep going and we'll get some questions. You got something coming up here I want to make sure that we share with my Roundup homies. It's coming up this weekend. So, Clint, tell us what you got over this Saturday, my friend.
Yeah, if you want to learn more about, just land trust, LLCs, demystify this, learn how the tax code, like I was talking about, getting paid 4 ways on a subject to transaction, as far as how you're using the tax code, how you can set it up to make money off the deals. I'm teaching a 1-day event. It's a live stream event. It's completely free. You join myself and my business partner, and we get on there and we demystify entities, show you how to set them up the right way, to structure them the way we've been talking about, to provide the benefits, protect yourself in case something goes wrong, so you haven't risked your personal assets. You're not putting yourself at risk for that property itself, and then how to harness the tax code. So it's a great event. And more importantly, what is so unique about, I think, this event compared to many events is just like you're able to ask questions today. On the event, I bring together a team of attorneys that work for me, because as we were talking about earlier, we have over 500 employees at Anderson. I bring together attorneys and CPAs that'll be on there. So if you got tax questions, bring them. You have asset protection, entity structuring, bring them. And they'll be answering them. And some of the attorneys, that are on there, they are actually, that's how they're building their own portfolios, because we're not only attorneys, we're also investors. And so they're using creative financing techniques. And one of them, Preston, that's how he got his personal residence, was using creative financing. So if you want to come to it, all you have to do is aba.link/KH. Just go right there, aba.link/KH.
I don't know how to link. Oh, it's in the video description, Clint. I mean, they gave me the link. I put it, all you got to do is go down below and click the button.
Oh, you got it in there? I couldn't see that. Yeah. Just click on it.
If it's not there, just refresh your screen, y'all, because sometimes we don't put them up until the thing airs. But it's right in the video description. Click right on it. You'll see Clint's beautiful smile. And I don't know what time you start, but is it all day, Clint?
Yeah, so we start West Coast time, 9 a.m. and we'll go to about 3:30
Cool.
West Coast time.
So
yeah,
you guys,
it's an all-day event.
they can actually ask questions there too, Clint.
Oh yeah, normally we answer about 1,200 questions
Wow.
per event, because I'll have at least 7 or 8 professionals on with me that are just sitting there monitoring the questions as they come in. Because when we talk about these things, we're talking way up here, generalized, and then there are all these nuances to where you're investing, how you're putting the deal together. And I'm not going to be covering those during my presentation. I'm just telling you, hey, these are the ways we normally do it. And when something comes up and your situation is a little different, you need to talk to someone. Well, that's why I have my team there. So they're going to answer your questions. So you leave that event feeling like, hey, not only did I learn a ton, but I also know that it's specific to me, what I pulled out of it.
That's cool, man. Clint, thank you so much for taking the time and effort to do that.
Yeah, it's what I do. I enjoy it.
You actually do, man. Clint's actually decent guy. I mean, really a laid back guy, man. I really enjoyed talking to him, even off camera. The link's in the video description below, and he's going to be this weekend. You get signed up right now. It's going to cost you nothing. You get to hang out with a bunch of attorneys and guys that are actually doing this stuff all the time.
Yeah, I'd rather take a Xanax with an Ambien chaser, some people are thinking right now, than hang out with attorneys.
I'm just saying, you guys are the ones on the hook for. You're the experts that know the information. I'm just not qualified to answer this stuff. I got to give a shout out to my new member here, One Southgate Enterprises. Thank you so much for being supporting our channel, my friend. I honestly appreciate your love. I really, we depend on guys like you to keep the Roundup channel rolling, man. I haven't been on here as much. He said he needs an appointment with you too. Can he get right to you, Clint, or is the best way to come through to the workshop?
Well, he can go through the workshop, or he can reach out to Amy, and she can get him an appointment.
I'll put that email in the video description too, Clint. Would that be best to do that?
In there. You have an A Kasperzak. Don't ask me how to spell it.
I've been dealing with her ever since.
Yeah.
Since the beginning. Okay, I'll do that. One Southgate. I'll put that in the video description too. This is good stuff. I got to get some Q&A, Clint. You got a few more minutes. You got to get out of here. Anything else you want to talk about the workshop before we get to Q&A here?
No, I just think, here's the thing, is that you don't know what you don't know. And what I found with real estate investing, there are so many different opportunities out there when it comes to investing. And if you set up the entities the right way, I've learned from my own personal experience. I mean, my portfolio is over 300 properties in different asset classes. And once I started harnessing the power of entities and the tax code, my investing just accelerated. I look better to lenders, I look better to third parties, and reduce your income so you have more money to invest. It just snowballs on itself. And so once people get that and they start using it, implementing it, and pushing it forwards, they're going to find a lot of good things can come their way.
Thanks, Clint. Chef Darnell wants to know, is it best to close with an attorney versus a title company, or let's just say on a sub-2 or creative real estate, Clint?
So I prefer title companies because sometimes I find that attorneys, again, they talk too much. They're too smart for their own good. If you got a good one, don't get me wrong. Sometimes people find great attorneys that know exactly how to set these deals up. They're experienced with them, and they're just boom, boom, boom. But if you have an attorney that's not experienced in it, you want to spend the time educating them, go to a title company. Title company, what are they there for? Push the paperwork through, get on to the next one. That's how they get paid.
Got it. I never forget, Clint. I had an attorney reading my docs one time. I'd never forget this dude. She turns to the seller. She goes, "Are you sure you want to sign this?"
Man, they're deal killers.
I wanted to show this lady, man. It's crazy.
Salt man is what they are.
Steve said he hasn't found anybody out there that has the knowledge what Clint and Toby have. Look at that.
Thanks, Steve.
That's cool, man. All right, looks like somebody's questioning the legality of what we're doing. Kimberly, you say sounds shady, Clint. You saying the horse is out the barn, man. How is this legal?
Well, what I meant by that is that once the bank recognizes the fact that something's gone on with that property, you can't unring the bell. So that's another way to say that let the horses out of the barn is that you're not putting it back in. I can't go back to the bank and say, oh, just disregard what I said. We never meant to change it. Now you've already started the line of inquiry. But to your point, what you just brought up, I think is very important here to mention. Legality. There are attorneys, there are investors who will say that's not legal if you do it. There is nothing illegal about assuming someone's mortgage. You can do that. There's nothing illegal there. It's not a criminal statute for assumption of a mortgage. What you're doing in that scenario, when the seller transfers you a property subject to the existing mortgage, if there is a due on sale clause in there, that is a contract action. It's like you violated your lease agreement. You don't go to jail for violating the lease. What happens is that the lessor has the right to pursue a civil action against you for monetary compensation. In this particular situation with the lender has the ability under the contract, under the remedy section, if the seller transfers the property without their consent, then the lender, if they discover that transfer, can accelerate the property or accelerate the mortgage, make it all due and payable. And if it's not paid off, they can foreclose on the property. So they have remedies that are available to them. Yeah, so my whole comment, man, is just once you tell the bank something, you can't untell it.
I hear you using the words they can do it. My daughter say, well, I can do this. I can. Just because they can do it, I mean, does that mean that they will do it, Clint?
No. You see, banks are in the business of loaning money, not owning property. And for the most part, in my experience of over 25 years now, rare occurrence to ever see a lender accelerate a mortgage. But you've had this huge spike in mortgage rates. And now you've got lenders that are trying to shore up their books to some extent, trying to get these low interest rate mortgage pushed into higher interest rate mortgage. So they have a financial incentive to pay more attention to their pool of mortgages than they normally would. Look at those. Now, also knowing the type of loan you're dealing with, if that loan has already been snapped up by Freddie, Fannie, and they're holding it right now, then if the seller transfers that property into an LLC, say you didn't even use a land trust, you could do a subject to deal with an LLC in that type of scenario, because Freddie or Fannie underwriting guidelines doesn't allow them to accelerate. It says you can't accelerate when it goes into an LLC. So the type of mortgage also can be a friend of yours. But if they know that you transfer the LLC to someone else, well, that opens up someone else, another issue. So they could accelerate. So my whole point is, don't go knocking on doors. That's what I've always told people, unless you want someone to answer.
That's a good one. I'm gonna have to use that one, man.
Yeah.
I think we all, including myself, at nighttime, we're just running all these scenarios through our mind, all these things that could possibly happen, and then it just makes us a little nervous about doing it. When I walked out of my first one, Clint, I looked around and nobody cared. Literally, no one cared that I bought a house and left the loan in the seller's name. No one even gave a hoot.
Yep.
I mean, they don't even care. All right, well, Clint's got to get out of here. Let me see. Let me put the banner up here. Register. Guys, links in the video description below. Clint has the all-day workshops coming up this weekend. It's going to cost you nothing. Hang out with him. I'm going to go over a bunch of different strategies. And how about capital gains? I guess Ann wants to know capital gains for the seller, Clint. Well, I guess I'll let you answer that question.
Sure. I mean, if the seller has any taxable gain on the sale of that property, but if it's their personal residence, there's not going to be any taxable gain because they'll fall under Section 121, which they can exclude up to $250,000 in gain, provided they live there 2 years. Now, if they're under
That's
that
right.
2-year period, yes, then they could potentially have taxable gain if the sale price is greater than their purchase price, their tax basis.
But don't they? Well, all I'm gonna have to say 100% of my sub twos have been owner occupant, Clint.
Yeah, but how long do they live there? So you see, you still have to meet
Oh
the
yeah, that's right.
to get that gain. And most of them, you know, I'm sure with in my experience, it's over 2 years.
Most of them.
Yeah, majority is going to be in that scenario, so it's non-taxable.
All right, Clint, is that it? I know you got the 7:45. How's your time to get you out of here, my brother?
Yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't stay longer. Something creeped up on me, and I didn't. I thought it was supposed to be an hour later, and they said, "Oh no, you got to be here this time at 5."
It's okay, brother. I appreciate you for doing this. So Clint Coons hanging out with us, talking about sub twos, this asset protection stuff and tax strategies. I have no idea how they do this. Get registered up. Anything you want to leave us with, Clint?
You know, education. You know, following you is so important. You're one of the beacons out there that when it comes to, you know, educating people on how to put these deals. I mean, I found you through YouTube.
Wow.
And I started watching your stuff, and I was like, all right, this guy knows what he's talking about, and that's refreshing. And don't listen to the naysayers, right? What I often tell people is this, because there's this natural thing. Oh, I want to talk to an attorney. I want somebody else to look at it. The way you position your question to a professional should be such that, hey, do you know about this strategy? What do you know about creative financing? Could you please describe that to me? Now, if they can't describe what it is that you're asking them, then how do you expect to get an answer that is relevant, even accurate to what you're trying to do? And so then you're trying to explain it. And when you're trying to explain it, you're not using the terminology they're accustomed to listening to. So they're always going to be down on it if they're not up on it, in my experience. And so just you keep that in point of reference whenever if you feel like you need to go run by what you're learning from Chris by a professional, make sure that professional is doing what you're doing.
Sweet.
Better advice.
Sweet. Okay, round up homies. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. You can get Clint for free. I don't know what, 6 or 7 hours this week. I don't know how many hours it is, but he's going to be on there teaching all this stuff. So it costs you nothing to get joined up. So go right there to the link in the video description, and don't take the time to think about it. Just click it. It costs you nothing. If you sign it up, he's going to send you a bunch of emails to make sure you're going to show up on time this weekend. Okay.
I'll show up at your house and turn your computer on for you and get you on there.
Okay. All right, guys. Subscribe to the channel, like the content, and make sure you share with other people that are in the real estate investing world that are actually trying to figure out. And you might have to refresh your screen. It's right in the link. It's right below. You can't miss it if you just refresh your screen. If you don't see it there, let me make sure it's here. Yep, it's right in the video description. You can't miss it. Let me make sure it's there, and then we're gone.
Hey, thanks for having me on. This was fun.
Yep, it's right in the video description. Clint, I'll see you next time, my friend. Thanks for round up, homies.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Peace.